Closed captioning is brought to you in part by Raven Reads. Unbox Indigenous voices. Subscribe today at ravenreads.org.
Welcome to Community Close-Up. I'm your host, Sharen Skelly, and it's nice to be back in studio. My guest today is Suneet Kukreja. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And Suneet is the program coordinator for Grey Bruce Settlement and Language Services with the YMCA here in Owen Sound. Welcome, Suneet.
Thank you, Shan.
We've got a lot to talk about today because you're a very busy person. You are currently, your main focus is helping people that are resettling or settling here in Canada, particularly the Grey Bruce area, from the Ukraine.
Yeah.
But we have people that are always settling here from places like we've had Syria, Afghanistan, Eritrea, where else? We've had people from Somalia, but currently the main focus right now is the Ukraine. And you are responsible for helping to allocate resources, help them settle with ESL, all kinds of things. Am I correct?
Yes, absolutely, Sharon, and I think you've captured it really well. I'm fortunate to have been a part of the YMCA Grey Bruce Language and Settlement Services. So this department started around 3 years back in the pandemic with COVID-19 at its peak. And it is a department that's funded by the IRCC, that is Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada. And the main endeavor is to help newcomers. And when I use the word newcomers, it means individuals from all the countries that you just mentioned about, right? And it's overwhelming when people move to different countries, either by choice or due to forced circumstances like the war in Ukraine or the crisis situation in Afghanistan. But we here at Settlement Services, we support them in different aspects.
Was it made especially difficult during COVID for them?
Yes, so we started during the COVID times, and I think it was really difficult at that point of time because everyone was remote, staff was working remote at that point of time, and people who immigrated at those times, they did not have direct access to the services, so they missed the whole in-person touch. So that was really hard for some of the families, and also the isolation part, right? So when you move to a new community, you don't have friends, you don't know the community well, and COVID did not help.
No, it didn't at all. Now, I guess we'll start then with the resources that you have, starting with basic. Well, first of all, if you want to come to the country from, say, the Ukraine, how do they go about even accessing that, coming here to the country? Do they have to have family, friends? Does someone have to sponsor them? How does that happen?
So, Sharon, there are two different ways in people actually come or immigrate to different countries. Like I said, the first one is by choice. So, for me, when I immigrated as an immigrant myself, it was by choice. So there are government programs in place like the express entry, the skilled category, where you just see if you're eligible and the government invites you to come to Canada or the States or anywhere, and you go from there. But in crisis situations like the war in Syria, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, they come under specialized visas and permits. So right now, the folks from Ukraine, they are here on a permit called the QET, so which is a special work permit given to individuals for 3 years. So they can choose to work in Canada for 3 years, and then after that, if they wish to stay here permanently, can apply for their permanent residency. So then coming to your question, like how do they exactly get to communities like the Grey and the Bruce or major cities like Windsor, Toronto? How do they come here? So for that, we do have sponsor groups.
Oh.
So a lot of kind-hearted individuals, they choose to be the sponsors, so they file up the sponsor applications and they're able to connect with the families and bring them to Grey and Bruce. So that's one way how they come here. And then of course, if they have family and friends in communities, so if I would have my parents in Ukraine and I was here, given the circumstance, I would sponsor them.
All right. So if you sponsor them, then you're responsible for paying for them
Yes.
to come here, finding them a place to live,
Yeah.
and paying for it, right?
Yes, and that's where exactly our services come into place. So under specialized circumstances, the government does have specialized services called the RAP and the GAP, which is the Refugee Assisted Programs and the Government Assisted Refugee Programs. So when individuals come, which are sponsored by the government does ensure that they have some financial assistance before they can actually start working. And then we come into action at settlement. We help them connect with housing, supports, anything that's needed in terms of financial assistances like Ontario Works for the time being, help them find jobs, connect them with the employment. If they need language support, we do have online language classes available that run throughout the week. So they can polish their language at that point of time. We do have Swiss teams that help to register children in school. So we work closely with the sponsors and aid wherever we can.
Well, this is just Sharen Skelly. I am asking you this question. We all know that housing costs, rentals are really high. So how could somebody coming over find a decent place to live and manage? It must be hard.
It is really hard, Sharon, especially with the housing crisis that we all know the Grey and the Bruce County it faces. So housing is a challenge. I will not say that it comes really easy, but with the situation from Ukraine, we have been really fortunate. We do have a lot of sponsor groups that have managed, and there are good cemeterians who have volunteered to rent out a basement, or just for example, there was the Rice House that the Chapmans volunteered for. So there are places for people to stay, and we sometimes are not able to find housing ASAP. So it does take time, but yeah, we manage it, but it's not fun.
No, it wouldn't be. And you couldn't get donations to supplement it because Ontario Works would take that money and...
Yes.
Yeah, like you can't just say, okay, well, could we have some donations? You can't do that.
Yes, and because they are eligible for Ontario Works, most of the individuals when they come, because moving to a new country, you do not find work ASAP.
Yeah.
It takes time. It takes 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Who knows how much time it might take. So then the Ontario Works department kicks in. They support families with basic cost of living. And sometimes if they're able to find a 1 or a 2 bedroom apartment, they supplement the rents as well. So we are very fortunate that we do have that in our community as well. But then again, housing, I would always say it is, we have seen people not able to come to Grey and Bruce because of scarcity of housing.
Yeah, and the other thing is transportation. I know that there have been people who have come to the area from out of the area, out of Canada, who've had to walk to work because there's no transportation that starts to accommodate their shifts.
I think it is time now that our municipalities, I would say, we all need to work closely with the municipalities, with the counties to come up with the transportation plan.
Yes.
Because
It's not
I think
working.
if we see that, if we need to see the growth that needs to happen in the Grey and Bruce communities, first thing is you need to provide people with resources, right?
Yes.
And one of the prime resource is, like you just mentioned, transportation.
Yes.
Not everybody can drive the moment they land up in Owen Sound.
No.
Right? It is
They can't afford a car.
Yep. So I think we need to have major changes in our
Yes, we do.
transportation. And the live example right now is Georgian College.
Oh.
We have international students that come here almost every semester.
Yes.
On an average, around 30 to 40 students, I would say. But all of them do not have access to cars.
No.
So there is no connectivity from Owen Sound to bigger cities like Brampton, Mississauga, Toronto. We do have the Guelph Transit, but not anything that
Yeah.
goes this side.
It goes to Guelph.
Yes, so I think that's a major change that needs to happen. And in town transit, like if I have folks working at the Chapman's in Markdale, there is no transportation. I have somebody who has the skill to work in a resort in Blue Mountains, there is no transportation. So I think these are all some challenges,
Yes.
which I think we all need to
We all need
accept
to, yes.
as a community
Yeah.
and work towards it.
Yes, and we have places here that start at 6 o'clock in the morning, or early, and they don't have a way to get there.
Yeah, and also the existing transit system, it's not the best.
No.
I think I was helping a client the other day navigate the map. So the bus comes back after, say, 1 hour or time. So if you have to pick up your child from daycare at 5 o'clock from one to the other, it takes an additional 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah.
So again,
It's not working.
Yep, it's not working.
Yeah.
We are in dire necessity of a better healthcare system as well. There are no doctors and physicians in these areas, right? So if there are new families coming here, what do you look? A place to stay, which is a challenge. Transportation, which is again a challenge. Access to easy healthcare, which is again a challenge. So, but the good point about these communities is that Grey and Bruce have been such welcoming communities.
The people are
The
welcoming.
people are warm, they are welcoming, they are kind, and I think that is what attracts people, and that is what is different from the metro cities. That there is, if these healths are not available, there are people who are looking to go way beyond to help you.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes, if only you could have both. So the resources that you're offering now, you also offer ESL, right? You offer
Yes.
language services.
So, Sharen, we do offer language services. So when a client comes, when a newcomer comes to Canada, we offer classes known as LINK. That's language instructions for newcomers coming to Canada. So these classes are offered Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays in the afternoons and in the evenings, so that everybody has access to these classes and they can work on their language skills. I think language is a key component to get acquainted with your community.
Exactly.
To find employment, right, to assist with community connections. And we also offer something known as the conversation cafes, which are just generalized conversations that occur, where folks can come talk about what they did during the day, what went well at their work, what went well with their teenagers, and practice spoken English. So that's something we offer. And yeah.
That's great. Now, do you help people with getting their certification for their professional, whatever they have trained in or been educated with? Like
Absolutely. So when people immigrate, they have a huge skill background with them, right? Some of them might be physicians, engineers, or a Red Seal trade skilled craftsmen, right? So we do have something known as accreditation agencies, and depending upon what field you want to accredit your skills with, we help them connect with the right resources so that they can bring up their equivalencies. WES is one of the most common ones, and like if you are engineers or a teacher or some of the other trades, you can actually go through that process and upgrade your skills as far as the Canadian benchmarks and get employed in the same employment jobs. And we also have something in-house that is, again, funded by the ministry. That's known as the Workplace Language Pilot Project. In this, we do have staff as well as the ability to provide translation interpretation services. For example, a newcomer, like he or she is an excellent say electrician, right, and has all the requisite skills, and there is a need of the same in one of the factories. So our staff will shadow the person till he or she is comfortable in the job, provide on-site translations, interpretations, even demo a few things for them, and we have the option, like we have the resources to translate WIMS, CPR in all the languages that the employer needs, so that the employers can hire people with the skills without thinking that, oh, the language might be a barrier. And
Wow.
yeah, so that's a kind of support that goes hand in hand for the employers as well as the employees.
Great.
So that's a workplace language project.
Workplace language project. Oh, that's a good one. I know I'm a retired nurse, and I know the RNAO, the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and the College of Nurses are working really hard to decrease the amount of time that registered
Yeah.
nurses have. They used to have to go through this extremely long re-education process when they came to Canada and Ontario to recertify to be able to work. And they're trying to decrease that because it's not really a matter of re-educating, it's seeing where they're at
Yeah.
and just going from there, sort of assessing their skill level and then just giving them their certificate of competence. So they're doing that now because they need nurses, and it doesn't seem right to make
Yep.
them go re-educate them. They are already nurses.
No, I totally agree with you, Sharon. Like there is so much of talent, there is so much of skill set that's available, right? It's just how we channelize it, right? I think every profession needs to look around them and bend the rules a little. At the same time, being mindful of that, there might be huge potential and skill set in an individual, and how can we make the best use of it without getting
Right.
frustrated, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've asked, like you said, about they were asking or saying you could come on a professional certificate. Well, we're asking people to come over and then saying, oh, well, we need you to, you can't work until you do this, this, and this. It didn't make sense.
Yep. And even at settlement services, we try and match people with the right skill set. For example, if someone was a trained nurse, until the time they get their credits or the accreditation in place, we try to find jobs in the nursing homes, right? Which is
Right.
close to their profession.
Right.
So they are in that profession rather than finding them jobs at different skill sets where
Right.
they're clueless. So again, that's one of our main endeavors, that connecting people with the right skill set, right? What did they go to school for? Telling them that, yes, you can do it. It might take a little bit of time. It might take a year, but it is worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that kind of awareness is really important when people with skilled or with high education, they come here, assuring them that nope, what you've learned is not a waste.
Yes.
Right? You might have a lifetime experience with you, and you can totally use it here.
Exactly.
So
it just seems so insulting to me to tell someone that, yes, well, I'll just use nursing for an example. Yes, you're a registered nurse, but here you aren't. You have all this education, but it's not good enough for us. I can understand wanting them to have a grasp of our language just because we don't want any sort of complications that way. But, and I can understand a bit of re-education, upgrading, but not the whole thing.
I totally get what you're saying, Sharon. And I always say to myself, so what changes in a human body that might change
Is
at
someone
one
in
end of the
Ukraine different than someone in Canada? No, I haven't had a friend who came here from Poland, and that's the one that really bothered me. She was so smart. She was smarter than most people I knew, and she just had to learn a bit of she learned English so fast that she knew it better than we did, and she had to go all through the program again. And I thought, are people in Poland different than they are in Canada? I just didn't understand that. It was so insulting to her. And she'd done a year of medical school before she'd done nursing. It just, and the money it cost her.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's one of our main. I'm so thankful that we have the settlement and language services here in the Grey and the Bruce County, because I think the guidance that is offered to newcomers through this program is immense. Sometimes people don't even realize that, you know, there is a pathway that's available to bridge their skill level. So I think it has come at the right place when when immigration is in process, and when there's so much of influx of immigrants coming in, either from Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, or the skills trade.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, do you take volunteers? Do you need volunteers or people to help out in your program?
Absolutely. Volunteers, I feel they are really important for any program. First of all, because they are the excellent ways to connect to the community. We do have around 4 to 5 volunteers who volunteer with us for our language schools, so especially learners who are low CLB levels. So sometimes they may get overwhelmed if it's a bigger class. So then volunteers really help up. We do run community connection activities like, say, a picnic at the park, or a canoe trip, or learn how to camp. So then again, our volunteers come up and they assist children, newcomers, to make it more fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if someone's interested in volunteering in any of your programs, how would they go about doing that?
So because we work with vulnerable people and youth, so we do have
Police checks
and a process that
Right.
involves volunteers.
Right.
So we treat them with the same respect, kindness,
Oh, of
how
course.
it is an employee, if it would be an employee with us.
Right.
So they still need to have the police check.
Right.
And do all the YMCA mandatory training, like the child protection training. And yep, and then
So
they're
just
on board.
contact you?
Yes.
So go on to the YMCA Brayburg Settlement and Language Services and contact you at your email?
So we also have the YMCA Owen Sound website. So
Right.
there are forms available for volunteers and employees
Okay.
who wish to participate with us or who wish to volunteer. They can fill up the volunteer form and send it to us, or they can contact the settlement services directly at settlement.org. So whatever works best for them.
Now, if you know, or if someone has a family member or a friend that they wanted to bring over, is there some way that they contact you, or?
Yes, sure. We do, like I said, other than providing supports in terms of resources for new families, we also do a lot of navigation with our IRCC ministry. So again, if there are people who want to sponsor their family members, bring their family members, we can guide them. We can print the forms for them, and we can't fill the forms for them. So they can fill up the forms. We can go over the forms with them, assist them in posting them and sending them to the right channels, which helps. So that's one thing we do. We assist people to apply for their citizenships, PR cards, if they need to do anything with the ministry, so all that kind of work.
So if someone decides they want to help their family, is it a long process? Like, would it take years or months, or?
Depends. If it's a spouse who is in some other country, it may take 1 year to a year and a half. If they are children, it usually takes less than a year sometimes. If it's parents, like if I have to sponsor my parents, so it may take time, around 2 to 3 years. So
These all sound long.
yeah, like there's no instant.
No.
Yeah,
But
every process takes around a year.
so it's worth it if you're considering it to start it right away.
Yes, started right away. I would say, like, if you have a family member whom you wish to sponsor or are looking, I think you should start the process right
so
away.
don't just think about it for a while.
Nope,
Go
just
in and
do
do
it.
it right away.
Yep.
Now, if you want to be a sponsor, what would you suggest doing? Going in and talking to you, or?
So for sponsors, there is a website CSC.gc.
CSC?
CIC.
Oh, CIC.
Yes, .gc. So I would say that's the main resource for all our immigration questions. So there we do have a list who can be a sponsor.
I
right?
see.
A person can be a sponsor. I think most of the sponsors that we have in these areas, they're a group of fives.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Groups of people
yes.
sponsor because it's expensive, right?
Yes. So they have to show that they have adequate funds to support
yes,
the family.
I guess so, because you don't want people to get a family over and then they can't afford to, and then the government has to.
Yes. And then I think then you need to show that you have adequate funds to support that family, and you're going to support that family for a year.
Oh, yes.
By paying for boarding, lodging, and some of the other stuff. So that's one process, and I think single sponsorship, usually people sponsor if they are family members. But if you are looking to sponsor someone from, say, some other part of the country, I would always say group sponsorship programs are better.
Right. So CIC.ga.
GC.
GC.
Yeah.
CIC.gc.
Yeah.
Right. Have you been hearing any people wanting to come over from Pakistan because of the flooding?
Not specifically because of flooding, but we do have people in general come from Pakistan. I think there were a few families that went to Quebec, and then from Quebec we do see an influx of families moving out of Quebec. And coming here or going to the GTA. But we haven't heard any families directly come.
I wonder if the flooding will affect people wanting to come to Canada. That will be interesting to see, because it is really quite a crisis over there now.
Absolutely. And like I said, like crisis situations like these, they will be there in the future. Right?
They just crop up so quickly and you never know.
I totally agree with you, Sharon. I think in the past 3 years, who would have known that the war from Syria would go into the situation in Afghanistan, and then the war in Ukraine, and now the flooding in Pakistan.
And that's a climate change one.
And
so it'll be climate change refugees too.
So
it's remarkable, isn't it? And we have to take care of our brothers and sisters.
Absolutely, and that's why I think our settlement services are busier. Ever since we have been back, our office is always busy. We do have a lot of people walk in from all different aspects, from all different countries with different needs, requirements. But it is a very satisfying experience to see that you are actually able to assist and help.
So if anyone has any questions, they just go to the Grey Bruce Settlement and Language Services website, which is a YMCA Owen Sound. They can call you, email you, and they'll get all kinds of information. If you were seriously thinking of sponsoring someone, though, don't waste time. Go ahead and contact you.
Yep.
Suneet, thank you for dropping by, and we'll have you in again because in the new year, because things change so often.
Absolutely.
And it's good to keep on top of these things. And remember, they are brothers and sisters, and we have a responsibility to care for everyone. So remember also, it's your community, so take part. So join me again here on Community Close-Up on Rogers TV. And remember, COVID isn't over yet. So get a vaccination, wash your hands, wear a mask if they ask you to, and socially distance. That's all just my suggestions. Take them as you may. And join us again here on Rogers TV.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line. Email us or connect with us on social media.
Every year, dozens of Canadians are killed or seriously injured because they take risks around railway tracks. Talk to your loved ones about rail safety. Visit stoptracktragedies.ca.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday Tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live